Captain here had served on the science vessel Whisper of Dawn for 30 cycles. She had mapped nebulae, collected samples from dead moons, and cataloged life forms across 100 worlds. Never once had she fired a weapon. Never once had she needed to. They were not warriors. They came from Ara Prime, a gentle world of soft winds and warm oceans. Their bones were light. Their skin was thin. Evolution had given them minds for thinking and hearts for feeling, but not bodies for fighting. In a galaxy full of dangers, they survived by being useful, by being kind, and by never making enemies. But enemies had found them anyway. The Armada appeared in the sky above Helix 7 without warning. 300 warships blocked out the sun. Their weapons began firing before any message was sent. Cities burned. Millions died in the first hour. Here watched from orbit as her people ran through burning streets. She heard their screams through the communication channels. Children calling for parents. Parents calling for children. And underneath it all, the cold voice of the commander demanding surrender. All will submit to processing, the voice said. Resistance will result in termination. This world now belongs to the Empire. Processing. Here knew what that word meant. She had heard stories of other species who had been processed. Slaves, property, things to be used until they broke. Her first officer grabbed her arm. Captain, we must flee. The Whisper is a science vessel. We have no weapons. We cannot fight. I know, Here said. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. Then we run. We warn the other colonies. We tell the Galactic Council. Here shook her head slowly. The Council will do nothing. They never do. They will write reports and hold meetings while our people die. Then what do we do? Here looked at the navigation display. There was one place in the galaxy that the Galactic Council had forbidden anyone to visit. A single star system surrounded by warning beacons. A place marked with the symbol for extreme danger. The Sol system, Every species in the galaxy knew about Earth. It was a nightmare world of crushing gravity, where the air itself was poison to most life forms. Water fell from the sky in violent storms. The ground shook and split open without warning. Fire erupted from mountains, and the creatures that lived there were monsters. The Council had studied Earth from a distance. They had observed the dominant species with growing horror. These beings hunted in packs. They chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They covered their bodies with the skins of dead animals. They fought wars against each other with weapons that could crack continents. And somehow, impossibly, they had survived their own world long enough to build ships and reach for the stars. The Council had placed Earth under permanent quarantine. No contact was to be made. They were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too aggressive. Better to leave them alone in their deadly corner of the galaxy and hope they never found a way out. But here was desperate, and desperate people did desperate things. Aim the long-range transmitter at the Sol system, she ordered. Her first officer stared at her. Captain, that is forbidden, the quarantine. The quarantine was made by people who are not watching their children burn. Here's voice cracked. Aim the transmitter, now. The crew obeyed. They were afraid of the yes, but they were more afraid of what was happening on the planet below. Here recorded her message. She did not bother with formal greetings or diplomatic language. There was no time for that. To anyone listening, she said, they are killing us, our children, please, anyone. She sent the message. Then she sent it again. And again. For 3 days she aimed her small beacon at that forbidden star and screamed into the void. She did not know if anyone would hear. She did not know if they were even capable of receiving her signal. She did not know if they would care. But she had to try. 12 light-years away, the message reached the outer edge of human space. A listening station on Pluto detected the signal. A computer translated the alien language. An operator read the words and felt something cold settle in his stomach. Within the hour, the message reached Earth. Admiral was eating dinner with his family when his communicator buzzed. He read the message once. Then he read it again. Then he stood up from the table without a word and walked to his office. For 200 years, humanity had believed they were alone in the universe. They had sent probes to distant stars. They had built colonies on Mars and the moons of Jupiter. They had always wondered if there was anyone else out there. Now they knew, and the first message they received was a cry for help. Called an emergency meeting, military leaders gathered within hours. Politicians argued about first contact protocols and diplomatic procedures. Scientists demanded caution. Lawyers warned about unknown legal implications. Listened to all of them. Then he pulled up the message and played it for the room. "They are killing us. Our children, please, anyone." The room fell silent. "Those are children dying," said. "I don't care what species they are. I don't care what the protocols say. Someone is killing children and asking us for help." "We don't know what we're flying into," a general said. "We don't know their weapons, their numbers, their capabilities." "No, we don't," stood. "But we know what we are, and we don't leave people to die when they call for help." 14 hours later, the first contact fleet launched from Earth orbit. 27 warships built for a war that had never come. Crews trained for battles against enemies that humanity had only imagined. Weapons designed by a species that had spent its entire existence fighting for survival. The ships accelerated toward the source of the signal. Inside them, men and women checked their weapons and wrote letters to their families. None of them knew what they would find. None of them knew if they would survive. But they went anyway, because someone had called for help, and humanity had heard. In the Helix system, they continued their conquest. They did not know that their message had been intercepted. They did not know that ships were coming. They did not know that they had just made the worst mistake in the history of their empire. They had drawn the attention of the... And they were angry. Overlord stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, and watched his empire grow. Below him, the planet Helix 7 burned. His soldiers moved through the cities, rounding up survivors. Processing centers were being built. Soon, they would learn their place. Had conquered 47 worlds. He knew the pattern well. First came fear. Then came resistance. Then came acceptance. Every species eventually understood that fighting was pointless. They were stronger, faster, and more numerous. They had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 1,000 years. No one had ever defeated them. No one ever would. A junior officer approached his throne. "Overlord, our sensors have detected unknown vessels approaching the system." Did not look up from his display. "How many?" 27, Overlord." "Only 27, laughed. The sound was cold and sharp. "They must have called for help. Some foolish ally has come to die with them." "Overlord, we cannot identify the vessels. Their design does not match any known species. Their hull composition is unknown. We cannot translate their communications." Now looked up. Unknown species were rare. Most of the galaxy had been mapped and catalogued long ago. A new species meant new territory to conquer, new slaves to process. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Let us introduce ourselves." The communication screen flickered to life. Expected to see another weak species, another collection of soft bodies and frightened eyes. What he saw instead made him pause. The creature on the screen was unlike anything in the galactic record. It stood upright on 2 legs, balanced in a way that should have been impossible. Its eyes faced forward like a predator. Its body was covered in some kind of uniform, but underneath could see dense muscle and thick bone. The creature looked directly at the camera without fear, without hesitation, without any expression could read. "I am Overlord of the Empire," he announced. "You have entered space claimed by the... Surrender your vessels and prepare for processing." The creature tilted its head slightly. When it spoke, the translator struggled to keep up. "I am Admiral of the United Earth Coalition. We received a distress signal from this system. You will release the colonists. You will withdraw from this system. You have 1 hour. Stared at the screen, then he laughed again. 1 hour? You come to my conquest with 27 ships and give me 1 hour. He leaned forward. I have 300 vessels. My flagship alone could destroy your entire fleet. You are nothing. The creature called did not react. Its face remained still. 59 minutes, it said. Then the screen went dark. Turned to his officers. Destroy them. Send a squadron. I want their ships in pieces and their crew in chains. 12 cruisers broke formation and moved toward the human fleet. Each cruiser was a veteran of dozens of battles. Each crew had killed thousands. They expected this engagement to last minutes. They were right, but not in the way they expected. The human destroyer ISS Revenant moved forward alone to meet them. It was a small ship, barely half the size of a single cruiser. Its weapons were primitive compared to technology. It should have been easy prey. The first ship opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked across the void. The Revenant did not try to dodge. It took the hits directly on its forward armor, shuddered, and kept coming. Then it fired back. They had never seen weapons like these. Metal slugs accelerated to impossible speeds punched through their shields like they were not there. The first cruiser exploded, then the second, then the third. The Revenant danced through the battle like nothing they had ever seen. It moved in ways that should have killed its crew. It changed direction so fast that any pilot would have been crushed by the force. But the humans inside kept fighting. They kept firing. They kept coming. In 4 minutes, 12 cruisers were destroyed. The Revenant floated in the debris, damaged but intact. Its crew was already making repairs. On the Eternal Conquest, silence filled the command deck. Stared at the sensor readings. He played the battle back 3 times. He ran calculations. He checked the data again and again. That is impossible, he said finally. No species can survive those maneuvers. The gravitational forces alone would kill them. His science officer stepped forward. His voice was shaking. Overlord, I have analyzed their transmissions. I know where these creatures come from. Then tell me. The science officer pulled up a star chart. A single system was marked with warning symbols. Quarantine notices in every known language surrounded it. Sol 3, the science officer said. Earth, it is a class 12. Knew about every spacefaring species did. They were planets where conditions were so extreme that nothing intelligent should be able to evolve. Crushing gravity, toxic atmospheres, deadly radiation, constant natural disasters, predators everywhere. Most produced only simple life forms, bacteria, insects, small creatures that hid and survived. The idea that it could produce a spacefaring species was supposed to be impossible. These creatures evolved on a world with nearly 10 times our surface gravity, the science officer continued. Their atmosphere contains a gas that burns. Their planet experiences constant seismic activity, extreme weather events, and temperature variations that would kill any within minutes. And they did not just survive there. They thrived. They conquered their world. They tamed its predators. They built cities and machines and ships. Watched the Revenant complete its repairs. Already, more human ships were moving forward. They are monsters, he whispered. No, Overlord. The science officer's voice dropped even lower. They are something worse. They are survivors. And according to our intelligence, they have a very specific behavior pattern when they encounter species that harm the weak. What behavior? The science officer swallowed. They call it protection. They will fight until the threat is eliminated. They do not surrender. They do not retreat. They do not stop. Looked at the human fleet. 27 ships against 300. By every calculation, they should win. They had the numbers. They had the firepower. They had conquered 47 worlds. But for the first time in his long career, Overlord felt something he had not felt since he was a child. Fear. Admiral's voice came over the communication channel. Calm, patient, final. 45 minutes remaining. I suggest you start evacuating. Made his decision. He would not run from primitives, no matter what world they came from. He would not show weakness in front of his officers. He was the overlord of the Empire. All ships, he commanded. Attack formation, destroy them all. The Armada moved forward, 300 ships against 27. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral watched them come. He felt no fear, only a cold, quiet anger. All ships, he said softly, weapons free, show them what can do. The battle for Helix 7 had begun. The capital city of Helix 7 had been beautiful once. Tall towers of crystal had caught the sunlight and scattered rainbows across the streets. Gardens had grown on every rooftop. Fountains had sung in every plaza. Now the towers were broken. The gardens burned. The fountains ran with dust and ash. Myra huddled in the basement of a collapsed building with her daughter, Sala. They had been hiding for 5 days. Their food was gone. Their water was almost finished. Above them, soldiers patrolled the streets, dragging survivors to the processing centers. Sala was only 4 years old. She did not understand what was happening. She only knew that she was hungry and scared and tired. She had stopped crying 2 days ago. Now she just sat in silence, staring at nothing. Myra held her daughter close and prayed to gods she had never believed in. "Please," she whispered, "please let someone help us." The sky above the city flashed with light. New sounds joined the familiar roar of weapons. Sharper sounds, faster sounds, different sounds. Myra crept to a crack in the rubble and looked up. She saw fire in the sky. She saw ships falling. She saw new ships, dark and angular, moving through the chaos with terrible purpose. Then she saw the coming down. They landed in the plaza outside her hiding place. Myra pulled Sala deeper into the shadows and held her breath. More soldiers, more enemies, more pain. The doors opened. What stepped out was nothing like These creatures were massive. They moved with a weight and power that shook the ground beneath them. Their bodies were covered in heavy armor and dented from battle. They carried weapons that looked too big for any to lift. Their faces were hidden behind dark visors. Myra felt her heart stop. The monsters from the forbidden world, they had come. She prepared to die. She held Sala tight and closed her eyes and waited for the end. But the end did not come. Instead, she heard voices. Strange voices speaking in a language she did not understand. Then another voice translated by a machine. Survivors detected in that structure, moving to investigate. Footsteps approached, heavy footsteps that made the rubble shake. Myra pressed herself against the wall and tried not to breathe. Light filled the basement. One of them was standing at the entrance, shining a beam into the darkness. It saw her. It saw Sala. It raised one massive hand. Myra screamed. The creature stopped. It lowered its hand slowly. Then, to Myra's complete shock, it knelt down. It made itself smaller. It removed its helmet. Underneath the armor was a face. Not a monster's face, just a face. Brown skin and dark eyes and short black hair. The creature looked at her and its expression changed into something soft, something gentle. "It is okay," the translator said. The creature's voice was calm and quiet. "We are here to help. My name is... What is your name?" Myra could not speak. She could only stare. The creature reached into a pouch on its armor and pulled out something wrapped in silver. It unwrapped the object slowly, showing that it meant no harm. Inside was some kind of food bar. Held the food out toward Sala. "For your little one, she must be hungry." Sala looked at the food. She looked at the strange creature. Then she looked at her mother. Myra's hands were shaking. Everything she knew about said they were killers, predators, monsters that hunted and destroyed. But this one was kneeling in the dirt, offering food to a child with eyes that held only kindness. Slowly, Myra reached out and took the food bar. She broke off a small piece and gave it to Sala. Her daughter ate it quickly. Color returned to her pale cheeks. Smiled. It was a strange expression on such a powerful face, but it was real. "There is more food on the ship," said. "Water too, and doctors, will you come with us? We will keep you safe." Myra found her voice at last. Why are you helping us?" Tilted her head as if the question confused her. "Because you called for help. That is what we do." More humans entered the basement. They helped Myra stand. They wrapped blankets around her and Sala. They carried them both out of the darkness and into the light. Outside, the city had become a battlefield. Human soldiers moved through the streets, fighting forces building by building. Myra watched a group of humans storm a processing center and free the prisoners inside. She saw medics treating wounded with gentle hands. She saw soldiers sharing their rations with starving children. These were the monsters, the creatures the galaxy feared. And they were saving her people. Across the city, the battle continued. Lieutenant James led his squad into a stronghold. The enemy had increased the artificial gravity to 3 times normal, hopping to slow the human advance. For any other species, it would have been a death sentence. The humans barely noticed. Had grown up on Earth, where gravity was high and life was hard. His body had been built for pressure and pain. The extra weight was uncomfortable, but it was nothing he could not handle. The soldiers stared at him in disbelief as he walked through their trap like it was nothing. They opened fire, felt a plasma bolt burn through his shoulder. The pain was incredible. He kept walking. His squad moved up behind him, firing as they advanced. One by one, they fell. They were not prepared for enemies that did not stop. They were not prepared for creatures that took wounds and kept fighting. They were not prepared for the cold, terrible focus of a species that had spent millions of years learning to survive. Reached the final room. The commander was waiting there, surrounded by guards. "What are you?" the commander asked. His translator could not hide the fear in his voice. Thought about the question. He thought about Earth. He thought about hurricanes and earthquakes and ice ages. He thought about wars and plagues and famines. He thought about all the ways his species had nearly died and all the ways they had refused to quit. "We are human," he said, "and we protect our own." The commander's eyes went wide. "We are not your own. We never met you before today." Smiled. It was not a gentle smile. "You are now." He raised his weapon and fired. Back in the plaza, Myra sat on a human ship and watched her daughter sleep. Sala had eaten her fill for the first time in days. Her face was peaceful. Her breathing was calm. Sat nearby, cleaning her weapon. Her armor was covered in burns and dents. Blood stained her shoulder where a piece of shrapnel had cut her, but she was smiling. "Why do you fight?" Myra asked suddenly. Looked up. "What do you mean?" "This is not your world. We are not your people. You came so far and now you are bleeding and dying for strangers. Why?" Set down her weapon. She looked out at the burning city, at the human soldiers still fighting in the streets, at the medics still treating the wounded. "When I was a child," she said slowly, "my grandmother told me a story. She said that long ago our people were weak. We were small and slow and soft. Everything on our world wanted to kill us. We should have died 1,000 times over." Myra listened in silence. "But we did not die," continued, "because we learned something important. We learned that alone we were nothing, but together we were strong. We protected each other. We fought for each other. We became a family." She turned to look at Myra directly. "That is what you are now, family, and we do not leave family behind." Myra felt tears running down her face. She had spent her whole life believing there were monsters. She had been wrong. They were not monsters at all. They were guardians. Overlord watched his empire die. The battle had lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of chaos and fire and death. His 300 ships were now less than 100. His best captains were dead. His strategies had failed. His soldiers were retreating. 27 human ships had done this. 27 small vessels from a single had broken the Armada. Stood alone on his command deck. His officers had stopped bringing him reports. The reports were always the same. Another ship destroyed, another captain killed, another squadron routed. The humans did not fight like any species in the galactic record. They did not form neat lines and exchange fire at a distance. They did not retreat when damaged. They did not surrender when outnumbered. Instead, they hunted. Their ships moved in packs, just like the predators they had evolved beside. They communicated through methods that could not intercept. They anticipated each other's movements with perfect coordination. When one ship was damaged, the others moved to protect it. When a vessel was weakened, the pack closed in for the kill. Admiral had studied the tactics carefully. He had noticed their patterns. He had found their weaknesses. And now he was using that knowledge to tear them apart. The ISS led us straight into the heart of the formation. Captain sat in her command chair, watching the enemy ships grow larger on her screen. Plasma fire streaked past her windows. Warning lights flashed across every console. "Damage report," she ordered. "Hull breach on Deck 7. Fires on Decks 3 and 4. Weapons systems at 60%. Nodded. 60% was enough. "Target their flagship's escort screen. All fire at will." The in her pack opened fire. Metal slugs traveling at 10% of light speed punched through shields. Explosions bloomed in the void. 3 escort ships died in seconds. The returned fire. A plasma bolt hit the directly, rocking the ship hard. Felt heat wash over her face as a console exploded nearby. She ignored it. "Navigation, bring us closer." Her helmsman stared at her. "Closer, Captain, if we get any closer." "Do it." The surged forward. The human pilots pushed their bodies to the limit, enduring forces that would have killed crews instantly. 15 Gs, 20 Gs, their vision blurred. Their bones ached. Their blood threatened to drain from their brains. But they did not stop. They flew so close to a battleship that could see the enemy crew through the windows. She saw their faces. She saw their fear. "Fire everything." At point-blank range, human weapons were devastating. The battleship broke apart from the inside, explosions ripping through every deck. They pulled away, damaged but alive. On the Eternal Conquest, made a decision. He could not win this battle. The humans were too fast, too strong, too savage. His fleet was dying around him, but he could still hurt them. He could still take something precious. If he could not have victory, he would have revenge. "All remaining ships," he commanded. "Target the planet, destroy the surface, kill every that still lives." His officers hesitated. Planetary bombardment was forbidden by galactic law. The Council would condemn them. Other empires would refuse to trade with them. But did not care. He was beyond law now, beyond reason, beyond everything except hate. "Do it," he snarled, "now." 60 ships broke formation and turned toward Helix 7. Their weapons charged. Their targeting systems locked onto the remaining cities, the refugee camps, the evacuation zones. Admiral saw them move. He understood immediately what they were doing. "All ships," he said quietly, "intercept those vessels, whatever it takes." Captain heard the order. She looked at her damage reports. Her ship was barely holding together. Her crew was exhausted. Her weapons were failing. She thought about the planet below. She thought about the she had seen in the evacuation camps. The children holding their parents' hands. The elderly being carried by the young. The wounded helping the sick. Strangers, aliens, people she had never met before today. "Family." "Helm," she said, "put us between those ships and the planet." "Captain, we won't survive that." Stood up, she looked at her crew. They were bleeding and burned and tired, but their eyes were clear. "Anyone who wants to leave, take the escape pods now," she said. "No one will think less of you." No one moved. Smiled, that's what I thought. Let's go save some people. The ISS Endeavour was faster than the captain pushed his ship to maximum speed, racing ahead of the bombardment group. His engine screamed. His hull groaned. His crew held on and prayed. He reached the planet first. 7 ships opened fire. 7 plasma bombardments meant to scorch cities and boil oceans. 7 beams of death heading for millions of innocent people. The Endeavour moved into their path. The first hit tore through the ship's lower decks. The second destroyed the engine room. The third killed half the crew, felt the ship dying around him. Smoke filled the bridge. Blood ran down his face from a wound he could not remember receiving. But the bombardment had been stopped. The weapons meant for the planet had hit his ship instead. Reached for the communication console. His fingers were broken, but he managed to activate the channel. All ships, he said, his voice was barely a whisper, hold the line. The Endeavour took 2 more hits, then 3 more, then 4. Watched his damage readouts go dark one by one. He felt the ship breaking apart around him. But he did not move. He would not move. His ship was a shield, and shields did not run. The last bombardment hit the Endeavour directly. The ship exploded in a flash of light. Captain and his crew died instantly. But below them, the planet lived. Admiral watched the Endeavour die. He felt something cold and hard settle in his chest, something old, something very human. All ships, he said. His voice was quiet, but every captain heard him. No more of our people die today, end this. The human fleet attacked with renewed fury. They fought like demons. They fought like monsters. They fought like the creatures their world had made them. One by one, the ships fell. On the ground, looked up at the sky and saw the Endeavour explode. She did not know the crew. She had never met Captain, but she understood what they had done. They had died so that strangers could live. Myra stood beside her, holding Sala close. She had watched the battle through a display screen. She had seen the human ship throw itself into the bombardment's path. She had seen it burn. They died for us, she whispered. They did not even know us. Nodded slowly. Tears ran down her face, cutting tracks through the dirt and blood. That is who we are, she said. That is what it means to be human. In space, the battle reached its final moments. The fleet was broken. Overlord sat alone on his command deck, surrounded by smoke and ruin. His flagship was the last ship still fighting. Admiral's voice came over the communication channel. Surrender, the human said. It is over. Looked at his screens. He saw his empire burning. He saw his soldiers dying. He saw his legacy crumbling into nothing. And he knew the human was right. What terms do you offer? He asked. There was a long pause. When spoke again, his voice was ice. You will release every prisoner. You will leave this system. You will return to your own space. And you will never harm another innocent species again. Closed his eyes. And if I refuse? Then you die here, today, alone. Opened his eyes. He looked at the human fleet, battered and broken but still standing. He looked at the planet below, still alive despite everything he had done. He had lost. I accept your terms, he said. The battle for Helix 7 was over. Silence fell over the Helix system. The fleet was gone. Their ships had limped away through the void, carrying their surviving crews back to an empire that would never be the same. Overlord had surrendered without conditions. His prisoners were free. His conquest was over. In the sky above Helix 7, the human fleet floated among the wreckage of battle. 16 of their ships would never fly again. 4,000 men and women had given their lives. The survivors gathered their dead and prepared to carry them home. Admiral stood alone in his quarters, looking out at the stars. He thought about Captain and the crew of the Endeavour. He thought about all the faces he would never see again. He thought about the letters he would have to write to their families. A knock came at his door. "Enter," he said without turning around. Commander stepped inside. She was still wearing her combat armor, still covered in dust and blood, but she was smiling. "Admiral, there is someone who wants to meet you." Turned who? "The captain of the science vessel, the one who sent the distress signal. She is waiting in the conference room." Nodded slowly. He had almost forgotten about the signal. So much had happened since they received it. But without that signal, none of this would have happened. Without one desperate captain screaming into the void, humanity would still be alone. He followed to the conference room. The door opened, and he saw her for the first time. Captain here was small by human standards. Her bones looked delicate, her skin almost transparent. Her large eyes were wet with tears. She stood when entered, but her legs were shaking so badly that she had to hold the table for support. Had never met an alien before. None of his crew had. But looking at this fragile creature, he felt something he did not expect. He felt protective. "Captain here," he said, keeping his voice gentle. "I am Admiral. It is an honor to meet you." Here stared at him. For a long moment she did not speak. Then tears began flowing down her face. "You came," she whispered. "I did not think anyone would come. I sent my message into the forbidden zone, hopping for anything, and you came." Moved closer. He was aware of how large he must seem to her, how dangerous. He made himself smaller, just as had done with the child on the planet. "We heard your message," he said. "We heard your people crying for help. How could we not come?" Here shook her head. "The Galactic Council said your kind were monsters. They said you were killers and destroyers. They said you would consume any world you touched." Was quiet for a moment, then he smiled just slightly. "We can be killers," he admitted. "When we need to be. Our world made us that way. We had to be strong to survive. We had to be fierce. We had to be willing to fight." He paused. "But that is not all we are. We are also builders, healers, teachers, friends. Our world taught us to fight, yes, but it also taught us something else. It taught us that no one survives alone. It taught us that the strong must protect the weak. It taught us that family is not about blood. Family is about choice." Here looked at him with wonder in her eyes. "You chose us," she said. "You chose to make us your family." "Yes. But why? You owe us nothing. We are strangers." Reached out and gently took her hand in his. Her fingers were so thin that he was afraid he might break them, but he held her with all the care he could manage. "Because you called for help," he said simply, "and we heard you." Outside the conference room, watched through the window, she saw the alien captain weep. She saw her admiral comfort a stranger as if she were his own child. She saw the first real moment of contact between humanity and the galaxy. It was not what anyone had expected. The Galactic Council had predicted war. They had predicted conquest. They had predicted that they would burn everything they touched. Instead, they had come to save people they had never met. They had fought and bled and died for strangers. They had shown mercy to their enemies and kindness to the weak. They were exactly what the galaxy needed. In the days that followed, word spread. They told everyone who would listen. They described the human ships that had come out of nowhere. They described the soldiers who had fought the hand-to-hand. They described the medics who had treated their wounded and the pilots who had died protecting their planet. They described the question the humans had asked, over and over again. "Do you need help?" The story traveled from system to system, from species to species. It reached the Galactic Council chambers, where leaders of 100 worlds listened in shocked silence. It reached the Empire, where generals began to fear the consequences of their actions. It reached every corner of known space. They were awake, and they were not the monsters everyone had feared. They were guardians. The quarantine around Earth was lifted. Human ships began to explore the galaxy, meeting new species and forging new alliances. They brought trade and technology and ideas, but more than that, they brought hope. Because wherever humans went, they asked the same question: do you need help? And if the answer was yes, they did not hesitate. They did not calculate. They did not demand payment or make bargains. They simply helped. The empire collapsed within a decade. Their vassal species, encouraged by humanity's example, rose up and demanded freedom. The empire that had terrorized the galaxy for 1,000 years crumbled into nothing. In its place, something new was born. An alliance of species, strong and weak, predator and prey, united by a simple idea. The strong protect the weak. The many support the few. No one is left behind. Humanity led the way, not because they demanded to lead, not because they conquered or threatened, but because when the galaxy needed heroes, humans answered the call. Myra and Sala returned to the rebuilt city of Helix 7. Their home had been destroyed, but human engineers helped them build a new one. Sala grew up telling stories about the strange creatures who had come from the stars, the monsters who were not monsters, the who had shown her kindness. Became an ambassador. She spent the rest of her life traveling from world to world, meeting new species, answering their questions about humanity. "What are you?" they always asked, and she always gave the same answer. "We are human, we come from a hard place, that is why we help." Admiral retired after the war. He returned to Earth, to his family, to the world that had made him who he was. But he never forgot the captain who had screamed into the void. He never forgot the moment when humanity discovered they were not alone. And he never forgot the lesson he had learned. The galaxy was vast and cold and dangerous, but it did not have to be lonely. Because somewhere in the void there was always someone who needed help, and somewhere else there was always someone willing to answer. That was what it meant to be human. Years later, a monument was built on Helix 7. It stood in the center of the rebuilt capital, a tower of stone and light reaching toward the stars. On it were carved the names of every human who had died in the battle, 4,000 names etched into eternity. At the base of the monument, there was a simple inscription. It was written in 100 languages, so that anyone who visited would understand. "They heard us call, they came, they gave everything, we will never forget." And beneath that, in the language of Earth, 3 more words. "Hold the line." That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not weapons or technology or power, but something far more valuable. The knowledge that they were not alone. The knowledge that when darkness came, someone would answer. The knowledge that they were watching, and they would always answer the call.